We're now going to talk about the social aspects of later life. So let's start with the theories of psychosocial aging. Research on older adults is now trying to focus on other aspects of health, such as social involvement and productive engagement with life, instead of just focusing on physical health. So there's this idea of successful aging, the pathway through late life that focuses on positive outcomes through health and social engagement to achieve well-being. But what does successful aging entail? Well, adults will go through normative aging and adapt to those changes so they can keep living a rewarding life. So it's aging, but being able to adapt to them and still get meaning out of your life, still be able to engage in your life, and have an overall happy life. Okay. So the continuity theory is the theory based on the idea that people tend to cope with life in later adulthood by applying familiar strategies based on their past experience in order to maintain and preserve both internal and external structures. In other words, this means they continue to do what they've done before. By doing this, the change becomes part of their continuity. For example, if they've been involved in their community throughout their life, they'll stay involved in their community, but they'll just do different activities that match their changing physical abilities. Continuity represents an evolution, not a complete break. So people engage in activities similar to what they've always done. They try to find a way to do the same hobbies, same level of involvement with family and community and church. They just adapt to take their changing bodies and their changing needs into consideration. So there's this idea of competence and environmental press. This looks at the relationship between a person and their environment. So let's break it down. The competence is the upper limit of a person's ability to function in 5 domains. Those 5 domains are physical health, sensory perceptual skills, motor skills, cognitive skills, and ego strength, which is, remember, ego is your identity. So your competence is your abilities to do things. The environmental press are the physical, interpersonal, or social demands that the environment puts on people. For example, a physical demand might be you have to walk up the stairs to get to your apartment. Interpersonal might mean that you have to interact with other people. And social demands might be dealing with the laws, customs, and the expectations that your society puts on you. What you're capable of doing changes as you age, but so does what's expected of you. How well those two things match determine your affect and your behavior. That's what it means by competence and environmental press. Okay, so how well you can handle what you're expected to do in your environment. So here's a graph. You'll notice this graph looks very similar to the ZPD and the graph for flow. Again, if we see the same thing appearing over and over again, there's something to it. So over here we have the adaptation level. That's right here in the middle. This is when the press level is average for a particular level of competence. This is where your behavior and your affect are normal. Affect is sort of the display of your emotions, how you look and how you act. The zone of maximal performance potential is right here. This is when slight increase in press tend to improve your performance. So down here's the environmental press. So here's where you are optimally. But as your press gets a little higher than what you're able to do, that pushes you to do better. That's like Vygotsky's zone of proximal development, right over here. Okay? The zone of maximum comfort over here is when the press is slightly lower than what you are able to do, which means that you have a higher quality of life because you are able to do everything that's expected of you. So this is where we are the most comfortable. Notice competence goes up over here. So getting too far out of either one of these zones leads to negative affect and maladaptive behavior. So over here would be when demands are greater than your competence, and over here is when demands are low compared to your competence. So over here you might be bored or feel useless or feel unneeded. Over here you might be stressed or feel like you can't accomplish what you need to accomplish. So we really want people to stay within this margin here. So personality, social cognition, and we're also going to talk about spirituality. So we are now in Erikson's stage of integrity versus despair. This is his final stage. This is the process by which people attempt to make sense of their lives. Essentially, do they look back at their lives and feel a sense of satisfaction or regret? Their thoughts of their impending death are balanced by the realization that one will live on through their children and grandchildren, and that becomes life affirming. So in this stage, they go through a life review. This is a process by which people reflect on the events and experiences of their lifetimes. They come to terms with their decisions and their events throughout their lives. There is a connection between engaging in a life review and achieving integrity. In other words, you can't achieve integrity unless you go through this process of going back through your life and looking at all your decisions and all of the things that happened to you. So now, achieving integrity. People who demonstrate integrity come from many different lifestyles and have made many different choices. There's not just one type of person who can achieve integrity. Anyone can achieve it. This is just becoming self-affirming and self-accepting. These people are just glad to have lived their lives they did. And you can achieve this any gender, any ethnicity, any walk of life. Anybody can achieve integrity as long as they look back and they're happy with their lives. So well-being and emotion. Your subjective well-being is the evaluation of one's life that is associated with positive feelings. In other words, how well do you think your life is going? It's subjective, it's based on opinion. And this is assessed by measures of life satisfaction, happiness, and self-esteem. Subjective well-being tends to decrease during middle adulthood. That's when we're the most stressed, remember? And then it increases substantially in late adulthood. Some factors of this are hardiness, just how well someone can handle things physically, whether or not they have chronic illness, their marital status, the quality of their social networks, and their level of stress. And this idea holds true across cultures. It's the same factors no matter what culture we look at. So let's look at some neuroscience in late adulthood. The amygdala, the part of the brain that regulates emotion, changes with age. In young adults, the arousal of the amygdala is associated with negative emotions. But in older adults, amygdala activation and emotional arousal are lower, so they tend to experience less negative emotion, lower rates of depression, and better well-being. Their prefrontal cortex also changes. Adults show less activity in that area than other ages of life. This may mean that they're less likely to be able to regulate their emotion, because that happens in the frontal cortex. So now let's talk about spirituality in late adulthood. We haven't talked about this before, so why now? Well, older adults often use religion and spiritual beliefs to help them cope more than they may use friends or family. The book uses mostly Christianity terms since that religion is so prevalent in the US. However, the same ideas can apply to any religion or spiritual belief. So we'll just be using the word God for clarity, but feel free to replace the word God with any word that reflects different beliefs. Allah, karma, multiple gods, the force, whatever you want. Okay, so we're just going to use God as sort of a generic term in this section. So religious and spiritual coping. This could be praying, or placing your trust in God, or getting strength and help from God. Okay, so we use the idea of God to help us cope with problems. Spiritual support is the type of coping strategy that includes seeking pastoral care, participating in organized and unorganized religious activities, and expressing faith in a God who cares for people. So what are some of the benefits of this? Well, it gives people ways to cope with things that are happening in their lives. People who have spiritual and religious beliefs have greater mental and physical health and psychological well-being, and they have greater feelings of self-worth. It does seem to help them out, having greater life satisfaction. So, using spirituality. Turning problems over to God is a three-step process. First, differentiate between things that can and cannot be changed. Focus efforts on what can be changed, and disconnect from things that cannot be changed. In other words, leave the outcomes of those things to God. If this sounds familiar, it's because of the Serenity Prayer that is used in many, many, many places. They use it in a lot of AA meetings or other addiction meetings. They use it in a lot of religions. Essentially, you'll hear variations on it, but the Serenity Prayer is basically, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So we see these same 3 stages in a lot of different situations and in a lot of different cultures. So the neuroscience of mindfulness. So mindfulness is a form, if you want to think of it this way, of spirituality. Mindfulness is just the idea of like being in the moment, of recognizing things that are happening but not judging them, not reacting to them, just being in the present and being calm. So ways to do this are like meditation and yoga. There's a lot of different mindfulness practices out there, and if you look for it, you'll find a lot of different videos on how to use mindfulness meditation. So there's evidence that people who have practiced meditation show structural changes in parts of their brain related to attention and memory. So people who engage in a lot of this mindfulness meditation have physical changes in their brain. There is an increase in brain activity during meditation. So meditation and similar practices may help slow down and maybe even prevent brain changes that could lead to dementia. So the practice of meditation, or what's called contemplation in some places, has been practiced for centuries. It's been practiced around the world and in many different religions. Many different religions have a form of this. So maybe there's something to it. So if you want to look it up, don't just look up any meditation, look up mindfulness meditation. That seems to be the one that is the most helpful. All right, we will continue this lecture in the next video.